Do you have any opening comments?
Nope. Welcome, everybody. And I look forward to everybody's testimony.
All righty, ranking members. Senator Val, Representative Val, sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Just looking forward to hear some good testimony.
Senator Gordon online.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Hi, how are you? I just can't be here in person today because I'm working in the hospital, but I'm happy to join by Zoom and I look forward to hearing testimony on these issues.
All righty. I think that's all we have for Vice Chair Delaney.
Happy to be here. Looking forward to getting the people's work done. And I notice Major Heineman is here. It's good to see you, sir. Happy to be doing the people's work.
And anyone that is present on the committee, do you wish to say hello? Good morning. Online. All right, so we're going to get started right away with our first speaker. And that is going to be Melissa Willett, Defense State Liaison, Office of DOD. Melissa? Is she online, Dallas? No? All right, we'll go back to her. We're going to go next to Senator Kissel. Good morning, sir.
Chairman Marks, Chairman Nolan, ranking members Gordon, ranking member Vale, and Vice Chairs Hubert and Vice Chairs Maroney. And esteemed members of the Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, I'm State Senator John Kissel, representing all or part of 8 communities in North Central Connecticut, one of which is the beautiful little town of Somers, which has a population of slightly over 10,000 individuals. And I am here to testify or actually introduce some folks in support of Senate Bill 634. And to my left from Senator Gordon's district, but a longtime volunteer in Somers, is Peter DiPaola. He's a U.S. Marine Corps former captain. We're, as I said, we're testifying in favor of Senate Bill 634. And we also have, and this is going to be a little wrinkle, and I've encountered this in my other committees, is we have David McCaffrey, who's the director of the Somers Department of Veterans Affairs with us, but he's online, and so he should be in the video queue, and he'll want to speak also. In short, what this was is the town of Somers, Mr. McCaffrey, and volunteers like Mr. G. Palino do a fabulous job allowing veterans to come and access information regarding their benefits, programs, things like that. There's an entire beautiful office in the Somers Town Hall, and folks from surrounding communities avail themselves of these services. They reached out to me because they wanted to know if there's any way to rationalize this, offer them support. They didn't want to give up their role in the North Central Connecticut area, being the fountain of information and service for veterans out there in various communities. It's not just the town of Somers. I reached out to Commissioner Soddy, who was awesome, and he helped draft the bill that you have before us. He actually did it in my office over at the Capitol, and I give him a tremendous amount of credit. And what we're looking to do is try to get a system where the folks that have worked there can get support services through the Department of Veterans Affairs, but also if there's a way to create a more symbiotic relationship between communities such as Summers and surrounding communities that avail themselves of the benefits of what's taking place there. And it isn't just small communities, but when I spoke to the commissioner, he said that there just seems to be various communities throughout the state that have assumed this role, and we're trying to figure out a way to help them out and able to do that. And so at this point in time, I would defer to David McCaffrey, who would like to speak online. And I also have Mr. DiPaolino here who can speak briefly. And I defer to you, Mr. Chair, as to who would go first.
I'm sorry, who is your person online?
That is David McCaffrey, and he's in charge of the Veterans Affairs Department in the town of Summers.
David, are you online? Okay, David doesn't seem to be online, so we'll go with your person that is present right now. And if I can, just so people know, SB 634 is an act concerning municipal veteran services.
Sorry, Mr.
Sir.
Chair, I should have said that.
Good morning. Senators and members of the Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, thank you for this hearing and allowing us to speak. By way of a little background before I get into some prepared remarks, let you know my background as a veteran, work with the Marine Corps League, where we have quite a large detachment, work with a number of veterans. And one of the biggest challenges is this topic of accessing the VA system. So as a Marine veteran who served our country, I fully support this bill. In the military, we're trained to find our way through thick jungles and wide open deserts as a team. We can move undetected in the daytime or in the middle of the night. We learn how to read the terrain and understanding the dangers at hand. We lead our troops so they can complete its mission. Once we've completed our time in service, we come home. Many need support or care from the VA. But by no fault of theirs, the VA system has its own complex jungle of paperwork and processes, I'm sure as many of you know. If the paperwork isn't completed accurately and properly, the veteran will not get the access to the care and services they need in a timely manner. For some veterans, this frustration can lead to homelessness or estrangement from their families, which is their support network, much like they had when they were in the military. The key tool for veterans to navigate the veteran healthcare system is a well-trained and certified municipal veterans representative who should always be a veteran, like is required in our neighboring state of Massachusetts. We need these individuals to do two things: be available and be well-trained so that the veteran can use the system that was promised. The Vietnam War was 20 years long, and we just ended a 20-year war on terror last year. The current veterans often have different issues than the Vietnam era veteran, but all veterans need to depend on the credentialed municipal veteran representative who is there to help them navigate the VA system to receive the services that they need. I ask and urge for bipartisan support of SB 634. And I'm happy to say that myself as a veteran, my wife is a veteran, we work closely with the people in Summers on a number of topics, including homelessness, female veteran issues. And again, I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. David's online. Do you want to speak before or after him? Before or after David? David, you're
Yes, sir.
online, I was told.
Yes,
You may go right ahead.
thank you. Thank you, sir. Well, thanks again for allowing me to speak with the committee today concerning proposed bill 634 concerning municipal veterans representatives and veteran services. Just to give some history, from 2020 to present, myself, along with another military veteran, appointed by the town of Summers as municipal veterans representatives, and we have formed the Summers Department of Veterans Affairs. We provided military services and benefit counseling to over 2,000 military veterans in just 3 years. These are the initial appointments, not counting follow-up appointments. And along with family members in our North Central region. Whether facing homelessness, financial and health duress, tax issues, psychological injury, unemployment, transportation issues, or having trouble meeting other basic needs, our region's veterans have helped with resources to get them back on their feet because of our volunteerism. Our leadership, the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs, does not have the resources to fund the municipal veterans representatives mandated under Connecticut General Statutes 27-135. As a veteran, I can relate to the struggles my fellow veteran community members face upon returning home after serving. It can be hard to readjust as a civilian again, especially after serving in positions not compatible with the civilian job market, witnessing horrific events, and in experiencing psychological injury causing depression, PTSD, loneliness, and isolation. We want to fit in, but we've changed. Many just do not understand. We are asking that the state of Connecticut stands together with our veterans and that it shows us our welfare and success is a state priority. Each of us have sacrificed the best years of our lives for the safety of all. Here are my top reasons that we should support our community's veterans by expanding the statute's charter and compensating those holding this military veteran-only position. Every single citizen of this country benefits from the services of our veterans. It takes a lot of courage to serve America. Less than 1% of the population has taken our oath and accepted the lifelong sacrifices required to maintain our freedom. Many assume that if someone comes back from serving in the military and did not suffer a physical injury, they are fine. That is simply not true. Veterans experience a myriad of injury hidden to the untrained eye. Understand that many of our men and women make the sacrifice to leave their home for months and years. The families are left behind with additional responsibilities and the void of their absence. Remember that this time with family is lost. In conclusion, many of you surely feel that our veterans should be treated with respect and dignity for these reasons and more. Make it easier for us to learn about and take advantage of our earned benefits and services. Supporting our veterans deal with the vicissitudes of life after the military is a choice each of us enjoying our beautiful country should be more than willing to do. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to the committee.
All right, I want to thank you all for coming before us and speaking on behalf of the veterans in Connecticut. It's very important to hear the information that you all gave, and it is appreciated. And if you want to have one of your speakers come back, because I think there's going to be a couple questions.
Peter, come on back.
And we'll start with Senator Marks.
Thank you, Senator Kistel and all for coming. This is an excellent program. As a visiting ward nurse who takes care of many veterans, I have referred a lot of my client patients to our local service. And so what I'm asking is, in the bill that it states that you want to change some of the language about the manner of providing such services and the availability and contact information for individuals. How is it? Does it vary greatly from one municipality to the next right now?
I'm going to defer to Mr. McCaffrey on that.
I believe it does vary greatly. From our perspective, we see just a myriad of veterans that come into our facility, our office for many different types of conditions and mostly service connectable requirements. And we just do not have the resources available to have the necessary veteran service officer, the federally accredited service officer on hand to be able to get this necessary documentation process into the system.
So they're asking that the bill states that you'll file reports. Is that going to be difficult for you to do, or is that something you think that you'll be able to handle?
Presently, we have filed reports. Initially, we filed monthly reports to our local municipality, and we've actually been asked by the municipality to provide a quarterly report, but a monthly report. But we do have the capability, and we have on many occasions submitted that monthly report that identifies all of the different myriads of needs, requirements, and issues affecting these veterans.
So of this bill, what is the one thing that you feel is the greatest thing that needs to be championed to make it easier for you to be able to give the service that you want to give?
Well, there's obviously many different things. From our perspective for Summers, and I mean, the municipal service representative, Summers is a little different because when we initially started in Summers, we only saw the town of Summers, veterans from the town of Summers, because based upon the state statute that indicates there's a representative in each town, we discovered that that is simply just not the case. And so word of mouth caused the veterans to be coming to Summers from just about every town on the north central area. And so we have been inundated in our facility, and presently we have a 3-month waiting list just to get an appointment in to see us. And so we see roughly 10 new cases each week, and then probably an additional 10 for follow-ups. And the paperwork alone is it's quite substantial. And so there's just myself and another veteran that run this. And here we are seeing all of these different towns' veterans. One of the biggest things, it certainly would be resources to be able to provide for administrative support. But for as far as municipal service representatives, the most important thing is to have a veteran in place, because it just doesn't make sense. Veterans understand veterans, and having the town be able to check off the block with a non-veteran just does not serve the purpose in serving our veterans, because they just don't understand the many facets of that can affect those veterans. And
So I'm just going to ask Senator Kissel. So how would this solve that problem about the veterans from all of the communities going to the one community that has a really good veterans representative?
Sure. When I reached out to Commissioner Sadi, and I can't give him enough praise, he said, I didn't want to be in a position where I would require surrounding communities to pay a stipend. At the same time, Mr. McCaffrey and his volunteers, this gentleman from Coventry, not even the town of Summers, they're very proud of the services they provide. So, and like I said, there might be other communities, larger communities that sort of are the hub, and they sort of evolved on their own. So the commissioner suggested training, maybe letting communities know if you have a veteran that's willing to do this, the department will train them so that they shouldn't be hesitant, so that maybe more communities can establish these networks and these centers. But absent that, if we could try to get areas working together and maybe financially volunteer, I don't want to mandate requirements from an adjoining town to pay Summers because they're taking on this responsibility. And in talking to David, he didn't want to give up the responsibility. He takes great pride in this, but at the same time, because they're sort of being burdened because they do such a great job, right? So more and more people gravitate to them. So we're just trying to figure out a way, and we figure the first step is brokering communication, working with the commissioner and his great staff, and seeing if we can do this in a fair way. And that's my view, Madam Chair. Oh, and
Thank you very much.
Senator, if I could add to that comment, because I feel like we have contributed to Summer's increase in veteran services, because one thing we find out very quickly is a veteran services rep, a municipal representative that gets the job done, is someone who we very quickly tell others about. There's also a very big difference in the statute between the volunteer veteran service representative, municipal veterans representative, and the ones that are full-time, both in terms of reporting requirements as well as the those that the municipality has to provide. So in our town, our representative has a first job that is done, and then an additional duty is to be our municipal veterans representative, and has attended a couple of classes, but does not see a lot of veterans. So there's a
your
big
town being Coventry.
in Coventry, and no fault of that individual, but it takes years of training and years of experience to work with the veterans. And David and Sherry, they do a phenomenal job. So if you really want to get the answers and cut through the paperwork, you go to the people that get you the answers.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Representative Vale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Senator Kissel. Obviously, you know, this issue is pretty close to my heart as I represent Summers, Stafford, Union, and Woodstock as well now. And I've seen the progression of the Summers veterans. They basically, as volunteers, and we allowed for that when I first got into this committee, I believe in 2019, where every town had to have, all 169 towns had to have someone. They all had to be on the payroll. And we allowed, there were a lot of volunteers doing the work. So we changed the statute to allow for volunteers to do the work. And unfortunately, in all 169 municipalities are are supposed to have this. And some communities do it much better than others, obviously. And Summers being one, but Summers started up from scratch with Dave and Sherry not too many years ago. And they went from 0 to 200 in a matter of no time at all. And to me, I'm certainly not someone that ever stands, you know, for state mandates on municipalities. It's not something, but I do think that we should have a certain expectation that our municipalities are doing what they're supposed to do in regard to these veterans programs. And so I'm going to address David, if you're listening. First of all, congratulations to David McCaffrey for just being inducted into the Hall of Fame, the Veterans Hall of Fame. Here, the services were, or the ceremony was 2 weeks ago. So congratulations, David. It's well-deserved. We've been working on this issue for many years now, and kudos to you for all that you and Sherry have done. But if you would, David, your charge with what you do is to just for the town of Summers, correct?
That's correct. And thank you very much, Representative Vale, for those kind words. But yes, you're absolutely right. Officially, we are representing Summers only officially.
And you and Sherry are volunteers, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, and how many different towns veterans have you seen in the last 4 years? Do you have a count?
I believe
You can give me the
38,
name off.
38 towns.
38 towns for a small town in North Central Connecticut. So again, kudos to you. I know you'll never turn anyone away, but now you have, would you say 3 month waiting or 3 week waiting period? To
3 months. Yeah, 3 months.
So the people in your town are waiting because you're servicing veterans outside your community. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So again, and again, kudos. And I know there's other communities throughout the state that are having similar thing. I'm obviously representing Summer, so I'm more familiar with that. And what do we do? Do you think the language in this bill is strong enough to try to incentivize other communities to put the same amount of effort into this as you do?
Well, presently, the statute does not really have the teeth, I think, in order to promote the municipalities to ensure they have a veteran, and to have that veteran receive the proper training, and dedication and commitment in helping all these many veterans that have so many varieties of need.
Do you think this proposed bill in front of us has enough teeth to get that done?
Presently, no, I do not believe that it has is strong enough. I do not believe.
Do you have any suggestions for us in this committee? That's what public hearings are for, to put some more teeth in that you might actually think, you know, we want to, everybody on this committee cares a lot about veterans. And we want to help the whole state be able to provide the level of service that you're doing. And what would you suggest that we need to add to this bill to give it the teeth so that we can accomplish that goal?
Well, I believe that, you know, certainly one of the key things right now is that there's no mandate I think it references a strong suggestion to have a veteran in place. And also there's, other than to check the block by each municipality, I think the municipalities need to be held a little bit to account to ensure that they have a veteran service representative to look after their community's veterans, so that their needs are met. And we are just seeing so many veterans that with some only have basic needs that are easily managed, but many have significant hardships and significant medical conditions that warrant service connections, which have to be placed only by a federally accredited veteran service officer, of which I am not. And so it's just there are a myriad of different situations, but certainly we just don't have the level of support needed in the community or the state to get these veterans the help that they need in these outlying communities.
All right, David, I didn't mean to put you on. That was kind of a tough question I threw at you. I apologize. Could you do me a favor? I have just one comment, and then I want to ask you one last question, and I'll be done. If you could maybe get together with some other, I know you're in contact with other communities throughout the state that work pretty hard in this. You know, I know there's some in Eastern Connecticut, and maybe if you guys could put together some language that you think would be needed and
Yeah.
send it to the committee leadership, instead of me putting you on the spot like I just did here in front of everybody. But if you guys could get together and have some suggestions that we could do something meaningful with this, I think the people on this committee, and I know the leadership for sure, are very interested in this topic, and we'd greatly appreciate your input on that. I have one last question. Do you think if we had a dedicated person at the Department of Veterans Affairs dedicated to the municipal service providers in each town, do you think that would be helpful?
Well, actually, presently there is an individual from the Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs that holds he's the person in charge of advocacy for for the Department of Veterans Affairs, and that encompasses the municipal veterans representatives. So there is someone, and I believe he is probably overtasked. And so we have reached out to him on various occasions. And so I think that he is stretched. And
Okay,
he
so
meets with
is
all of
he-
the existing VSOs as well, the federally accredited VSOs for the state.
So he has other responsibilities in addition to,
Yes, he does.
okay, so that what I'm asking is someone that's solely dedicated to overseeing the training, the implementation of all the veterans for municipal services programs in the state.
It's my knowledge that there is no one that is tasked with those specific requirements. And also Representative Vale, I would be very pleased to help communicate with our fellow municipal veterans representatives that to come up with some language.
Thank you. Again, I appreciate everything you do, David, and everyone here, Senator Kissel. I thank you for raising this very important bill.
Thank you, Representative Val. And I see Senator Gordon has his hand raised online.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say it's nice to see Senator Kissel again, and nice to see you, Mr. McCaffrey and Mr. DiPaolo. I appreciate the work that you do, very, very much so. I don't want to rehash what others have already said, other than I agree we need to see what we can do to deal more with this big problem. And I just want to, my question is more to sort of make it clear, just not to me, but to others, that given the scope of this problem, just not in Summers, but certainly in all the towns and municipalities throughout Connecticut, including the 13 towns that I represent of the 35th district as state senator, it sounds like you're looking to have more resources, more availability in the towns that aren't able to fully provide those services. I'm not always a big fan of unfunded mandates on towns, but it sounds like, and my question is, if there might be a way through the department, through the state, through services it might be able to provide, or can be given additional resources to provide to help the towns. Is that a way that could help the towns, as opposed to towns, including many small towns, trying to struggle to provide the services if it were to be more strongly encouraged or mandated? Because a lot of small towns may just not be able to do it from a resource financial point of view. Is this something that would really have to be geared from the state being able to provide some of those resources and get them out into the grassroots level at the towns? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, thank you for those kind words. And I'm going to ask Mr. DiPaolo to answer that, since he's your constituent from Coventry. And he also wants to dovetail into the questions that the good ranking member Vale had asked previously.
Thank you, sir. Great questions, and I appreciate the opportunity to touch on a couple of these topics. And I agree with Senator Gordon. Is the last thing I would want to do to our town, any other town, is impose additional hardships or mandates that they can't afford. One of the things that I've done a little bit of research and looked at is, for example, in the state of Connecticut, we have 61 health districts, and they're grouped into different municipalities that contribute a little bit. So those municipalities can provide those health services to a larger geography. A concept like that might help solve this situation, where there could be a group of communities. Like in our small corner of the world, we have Coventry and Andover and Hebron and Columbia, which are all small towns, none of which individually could afford one full-time veteran municipal representative. But clearly Summers is a much larger area, and they have two people that do full-time work. What David probably didn't tell you is this past Saturday, they had a crisis situation. The two of them came in all day on Saturday to help that veteran. All day. They gave up their entire Saturday because a veteran was in crisis. And those are the types of situations where that municipal veteran representative is urgently needed. This is not a 9 to 5 job because you never know when those crises happen. So I think that's one thing I would say. And yes, I think we would certainly like to look at some of the language that can be either refined or improved upon. So there is a little more consistency and enhanced training for all these representatives, because as veterans, when we get to where we do need the VA services, it's nice to have that guide to help us get through the process. It's not an 8-hour class or even a 40-hour class. It takes a lot of work to get to the level of training that Dave and Sherry have, where they can answer our questions. So I hope that helps. Thank you.
Senator Gordon, any other questions?
Just other than thank you, I appreciate both of you and Senator Kissel being here today to talk with us. And I just want to follow up on what Representative Vale said, which is if there is additional wording that could be provided or suggested to us, I would welcome very much seeing what we could do. And the idea of trying to have towns work together is good, especially for small towns who are resource strapped and financially strapped. I think that those are different ways we can think out of the box to see what we can do to help veterans all throughout the state. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
And if I could just add, when I spoke to the commissioner, it's not just small towns like Summers. I don't want that to be the thought. There's also much larger communities, and I can't rattle them off my fingertips, but the commissioner is well aware, that also perform this role. And it's so there's some areas, for whatever reason, had veterans that are well trained and they did a wonderful job. And like anything, you give it to the person that does a great job, the word spreads. And so that this sort of formed ad hoc throughout the entire state of Connecticut. And now we're trying to make it fair because they have great pride and they want to take care of their fellow veterans. And at the same time, because they do such a great job, everybody's going to them and other towns don't really have to worry about it too much. So we're just looking to try to figure out how to level that playing field a little bit. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I understand that, when there's someone that does really great work, people tend to go to that person no matter what. So I'm sure that is one of the big things that is happening. So Representative Delaney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to first start by thanking you, Senator Kissel, and you gentlemen for speaking. One, for your bravery in testifying, two, for the work that you've done in uniform, and three, for the work that you've done for your communities outside of uniform. As a U.S. Army sergeant who recently made the transition from active duty to the reserve, this issue is near and dear to my heart and to my community in Stamford, Connecticut, where they're actually currently having a meeting right now to discuss this issue. And I'll do my best not to belabor the points of my good colleagues and our good ranking members whose comments I solidly agree with. But my questions for you, gentlemen, are one, you stated that you have around 3,000 cases that you took point on in the course of 3 years. I'd like to ask, do you know how many of those cases specifically were from Summers? And could you break it down, how many from Summers you were able to take down in at least 1 year? Or address in 1 year?
That would be Mr. McCaffrey.
Yes, sir. So in the past 3 years, we've seen just over 2,000 new cases, of which surprisingly, just about 50% are from Summers, and the other 50% are from the other 37 towns.
Yes, sir. My second question is, you also talked about a system of organizations by which it now takes about a 3-month backlog. For your system of time management in terms of how long you do your individual meetings, how long it takes for people to get to you and to physically sit down, was that system of organization something that you guys built internally? Or was that something that was provided to you by the state or any colleagues?
Sir, well, we received training from the state, and we also are both career military veterans, and so we're very, very experienced. We actually created the entire process, and we followed the state's guidance, which provides for a minimal of 6 different functionalities of areas to cover. but as we encountered each veteran who had specific issues and concerns and problems and medical conditions, we expanded upon those areas and got the training necessary to add that to our inventory. So I think presently, I know it seems like a high number, but we take care of about 180 different areas. Each veteran that comes to see us, we have an initial appointment that lasts at least 2 hours. So every veteran is afforded, it's basically a tailored appointment with us. We find out, when they served, where they served, how long they served, what they did, if they were injured, etc. And so it's a custom tailored event for each veteran that walks into our office. Follow-up visits, if necessary, as many can be, are usually a shorter period, maybe an hour or less. But we do afford veterans. We often, if the veteran works through the week, during normal working hours, we set up special dates and late hours as well. So we try to meet the needs of the veterans. Thank you.
Well, sir, I'd like to say that as an NCO myself, you guys definitely seem squared away, and your professionalism and dedication to duty are very apparent. I'd like to thank you for your selfless service and for your dedication. I know that this issue is very close to me and my constituents, as well as other veterans across the state. I'd like to echo the comments of the ranking members in saying that we look forward to seeing any potential language on how we can address this. So thank you, gentlemen, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Delaney. Senator Marks, or number 2.
Thank you, everybody. This is so important. And I think I actually, before Representative Vale spoke, I did write down that I don't think this answers the need of, I don't think this bill actually answers what you need. You're acting as a social worker, as a nurse, as a CPA, as a real estate agent. I know I have sat with veterans before, and it can take hours just to get one medication delivered to the house. So I have been there. So the training, they go through the department training, but everybody's going to Summers because they're good at Summers. So you're going to go to the best doctor, you're going to go to the best CPA. So and I'm sure this problem, you're just magnifying it. And I thank you, Senator Kissel, for that, because I'm sure it happens at a lot of other veterans. And if a small town like Summers is getting that many veterans coming there, it's because of the word of mouth. And just think about the rest of the veterans in our state that aren't getting the services because they don't know what they don't know. So when it comes to the training, do you ever take the municipal veteran, I don't know the exact word, but the volunteer from another municipality to come and work with the more seasoned veterans, so that because you're never going to learn unless you do it. So you're not going to learn, just like being a new senator, it's going to take me 3 or 4 hours to figure out something when Senator Kissel can figure it out in a half hour. And you just have to do it. So is there mentoring that goes on between the municipalities?
Thank you for that question. So we received the annual training, and then we also go to a lot of training that we see that the Department of Veterans Affairs puts on. This is the federal Veterans Affairs, or in some cases, the state Veterans Affairs, or specialty courses we've also taken. But as far as mentoring area municipal veterans representatives, at least in Northern Connecticut, there really are none. I mean, every town has a person identified, but in many cases, that person is not a veteran, and they just don't understand, and they refer any and all veterans to our office. And so there's not really any mentoring involved. Some towns have reached out to us and have asked us, can we train their volunteers to do something like what we do? And so we have reached out, and we've answered, we've brought in some people that some towns have identified, and unfortunately, presently, most of those towns have said, well, gee, you guys have a really good handle on this. We're not sure if we can compete with everything that you do. So when can we get an appointment?
All right, thank you. We'll try to make the bill have more teeth. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. Anybody else? No? Thank you, Senator Kissel.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much. And to all the veterans, thank you for your service.
And we're going to reverse for a moment because I see Melissa came on. Melissa Willett?
Yes, sir. My apologies for the delay in our testimony. I was having some issues with our DoD equipment, so I just hopped on from my personal laptop and I was able to get on. So this morning I'll be providing testimony for House Bill 5510 in regard to the Space Force and 5049 as it pertains to family child care providers. Is there a preference of the committee as to which I present on first?
How about 5049?
5049, yes, sir. Honorable co-chairs and members of the Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, the Department of Defense thanks you for the opportunity to provide testimony in support of the policies reflected in House Bill 5049. The proposed approach would assist with meeting the demands of military communities for family child care services. My name is Melissa Willett. I'm the New England Regional Liaison at the United States Department of Defense State Liaison Office, operating under the direction of Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. We represent the department and establish relationships with state leaders across the country who are concerned for troops and their families' welfare by harmonizing state and federal law and regulation on policy problems of national significance. These are identified by the Office of the Secretary of Defense, the military departments, and the National Guard Bureau as areas where states can play a crucial role. Taking care of our people remains the top priority of the Department of Defense and is at the center of our national defense strategy. Military spouses provide the strong foundation upon which their loved ones in uniform stand, and both our communities and nation rely on their resilience. Military service members relocate to new duty stations every few years, and the department recognizes the importance of providing military families with access to quality, affordable child development programs, and is committed to meeting the increased demand for child care across the nation. Family child care providers provide military families with reliable and personalized care in a home-like setting on and off installations, and the majority of providers are spouses of currently serving members of the armed forces. Family child care providers are certified via the military departments to provide care operated in on-base or off-base homes for children from birth through 12 years of age. When moving with their service member, family child care providers do not have to complete additional training or other background checks when they arrive at their new installation, unless their certification is due for renewal. As military spouses relocate every 2 to 3 years due to housing availability, they may end up living off base and be unable to continue with their business until they obtain state license. Many of our families rely on 2 incomes, and spousal employment is among the leading causes of decreased readiness and retention. By exempting family child care providers from licensure and registration that is duplicative of the certification they receive from the military services, states like Connecticut have the opportunity to enhance the quality of life and economic security of both the providers and military families seeking qualified child care options. If permitted by their services regulations, this approach would allow them to work immediately after being certified, inspected, and approved by the new installation commander to provide care to the children of military families pursuant to Department of Defense Information 6060.02. According to a recent report, the department currently needs 1,433 family child care providers to meet the demands of military communities. But in fiscal year 2021, the department reported having only 727 available providers, and almost 50% deficit, with 2,700 children receiving care in family child care homes. The Family Child Care Program is designed to ensure the highest standards of quality and safety are met in family child care homes. The certification process is widely recognized as one of the most stringent in the country. Standards set by the Department of Defense and military branches ensure strict oversight of service providers to include background checks, monthly inspections, and unannounced visits. Monitoring of family child care providers is conducted on a regular basis during all hours of operation, and family child care providers are required to maintain information as it relates to their background checks, inspections, insurance, training records, and visitation logs. In conclusion, the department perceives House Bill 5049 to increase access to family child care services will also potentially benefit personnel housed in southeastern Connecticut from the other military services who are housed at Naval Submarine Base, New London. To further expand employment opportunities for military spouses, the department supports policies that will ease the administrative burdens for military spouses who must go through the often challenging and frustrating process of relocating. The Department of Defense is proud to recognize the many efforts Connecticut has historically made to support our uniformed service members and their families. We appreciate the opportunity to discuss the policies reflected in House Bill 5049 and are especially grateful to Representatives Christine Conley, Representative Ansley Nolan, and Representative Andre Baumgartner for introducing the concept, and the members of the Joint Committee on Veterans and Military Affairs for raising the bill. I thank you for your time today, and I look forward to your continued support on issues affecting our military population.
Thank you, Melissa. By chance, have you compared the military regulations with the state of Connecticut's to ensure that some of the policies are met equally, especially when it comes to safety and certification?
I have not, sir, done a side-by-side comparison of the licensure requirements from the state of Connecticut as they compare to the DoD or that of a military service branch, but I'd be happy to make that comparison and send that to committee members for your consideration.
That would be great. I mean, that's just one of the questions that have just come up recently, and I mean, we will also look at it, but just wondered if you had done anything with it to compare.
Yeah, no, sir, and that's a great question. I will say that the standards set by the DoD and the military branches are of the highest standard. So I'm confident that they would reflect in the same way in the requirements of the state of Connecticut.
Yes, thank you. Senator Marks?
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chair Nolan. Hi, Ms. Will, thank you for being here. So if somebody relocates here and they want to work at a child care center on the subbase, do they also have to get the Connecticut licensure, or are they allowed to work with just the federal DoD license?
So the policies reflected in this bill would allow that provider to transfer to the state of Connecticut with their FCC license, not having to relicense in the state of Connecticut.
So do some states not have their own license? Like, I don't understand. If it's on the base, you still need to get a Connecticut license in addition to your DoD license?
On the installation, the family child care providers are provided certification through the Department of Defense and or the military service branch. This would allow for family child care providers off the installation also in a home setting. This is not for daycare centers.
Okay, so if this was your first, if you wanted to get your child care license here in Connecticut and it was your first time and you were military, would you get the Connecticut license as well as the DoD license? Do you know?
You would have to get, if the policies of 5049 were passed, you would only have to get the DOD certification.
So right now you'd have to get both if you wanted to then transfer your Connecticut license somewhere else.
Yes.
Okay, and I mean, if anything, we should be able to at least let the childcare workers, since, you know, they are so needed, start working here. And if there are provisions of the Connecticut license that are different than the military, that they could work on that while being employed. So I definitely support this, and I hope we can get it passed and we can make it work. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Melissa, would you like to go on to 5514?
Absolutely, sir. Thank you. So again, I join you to testify in favor of the policies reflected in now House Bill 5510, adding Space Force to the various definitions of armed forces in the state of Connecticut. By adding the Space Force to the definition of armed forces in Connecticut to include the National Guard, the state government can recognize the important role the Space Force plays in protecting the country and supporting state residents. These policies will minimize disruptions in benefits and services for eligible service members and their dependents, and will ensure state law reflects the federal definition, which will in turn ensure service members and their families have access to the same benefits and services no matter where they are stationed. Updating the definition of military service in the state of Connecticut to include the Space Force will also ensure that service members and their families have a smooth transition when they move to the state. This is particularly important for active duty service members and their families who are required to move frequently. On December 20th, 2019, Congress enacted the United States Space Force Act, which established the United States Space Force as an armed force within the Department of the Air Force. Its primary mission is to organize, train, and equip military personnel for Space Force operations and defend the United States' interests in space. Space Force is the first new branch of the armed forces in over 7 decades. This requires states to consider modifying their policies to ensure their definitions reflect this change in force structure, which will minimize disruptions in benefits and services for space guardians and their families. Adding this branch of service to the Connecticut Revised Statutes definition of armed forces will ensure that military families are equally represented under all Connecticut laws, which define military service, military retiree, and veteran, and that all guardians receive the benefits and resourcing they have earned through service. To put it simply, by updating the definition of armed forces to include the Space Force, the state of Connecticut will be able to ensure that service members and their families have access to the same benefits and services as they would at any other duty station, and that they are not unfairly impacted by state laws that do not reflect recent federal changes. Failure to act could make it more difficult to attract highly skilled individuals to the branch. This would limit the talent pool available to the Space Force and could make it more difficult to fill critical positions. Not including the Space Force in the definition of armed services could also negatively impact readiness and resiliency. Service members and their families who are not provided with the same benefits and services as those in other branches of the military may not be as prepared for deployments and other operations. Without access to the same benefits and services, service members may be more likely to leave the military. Connecticut has a rich tradition of military service and veteran advocacy. Connecticut provides a wide array of benefits and preferences to veterans living in the state, as well as their dependents, in addition to those which they may be entitled to under federal laws and regulations. The policies in House Bill 5510, when passed, will afford the guardians of the Space Force the same entitlements as well as their families. Connecticut's military veterans, service members, and their families make significant contributions to our communities and our workforce, and the Department of Defense remains committed to working with our partners on the local, state, and federal levels to recognize the sacrifices they make on our behalf. On behalf of the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness and the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Military, Community, and Family Policy, as a service member and military spouse myself, I am grateful to the committee for all of your hard work, past and present, on behalf of those who have served. I thank you for your time today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Melissa. Is there any questions for Melissa? Rep. Lanu?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ma'am. One, I guess a real quick question. Do you happen to know how many members of the Space Force are residents of Connecticut?
At this time, I don't have that exact number, but that's something that I can get for you. It may take a little bit, but I can get that for you and provide it to the committee.
That would be helpful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. You're welcome. I will say there are roughly 8,000 guardians serving in the branch currently. And although the state of Connecticut doesn't have an active Space Force presence, a lot of those guardians that are currently serving may move back to Connecticut upon retirement or moving back to their home of record.
Thank you so much.
That number will grow.
Thank you.
It looks like no other questions. Thank you, Melissa. We appreciate your time you're spending with us. It is 12 o'clock. We're going to start alternating the list, going back and forth between public and legislator. So I'm going to go down and actually have Abe, Patrick, and Ally come up from Operations Healthy Home Front, and then we'll go back to the legislator list. It'd probably be good for you to go to the left of the projector.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, perfect. Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Daybeck, and I'm here with Abe Baker Butler and Ally Daddleback. We are students from Yale University, and we come before you today to strongly advocate for Senate Bill 863, a bill proposed by Senator Maroney to combat community violence through a veteran-based two-pronged intervention approach known as Operation Healthy Homefront. Abe, Ally, and I created Operation Healthy Homefront, but before we tell you the story of just how we did that, we want to highlight a few key aspects of the tragic story of gun violence in Connecticut and across our communities statewide. The total cost of gun violence, summed over medical costs, judicial costs, and lost wages, ends up totaling over $1 billion in Connecticut alone. But these are just the economic costs of gun violence. The human costs of gun violence far exceed this fiscal price tag. The increasing rate of gun violence among youth leads to desensitization and psychological numbing that leave communities with deep emotional scars and perpetuate cycles of violence among Connecticut's most vulnerable Black and Latino populations. This cycle means that over 44% of gun violence victims end up being readmitted to the hospital within 5 years of their initial injury. Gun violence is cyclical, and there is a need for care within this hospital-admitted population. The lack of education around guns has generated a culture of gun infatuation in urban youth, while the lack of safe storage options has increased easy access to guns. Currently, over 4.6 million American children have easy access to loaded and unlocked firearms in their household. Developing an intervention program to increase safe storage and education of firearms will ultimately prevent firearms from accidentally falling into the wrong hands, thus saving lives and continuing to set nationwide precedents of bipartisan gun support in our state of Connecticut. Having the opportunity to engage veterans in this solution is immense. By engaging veterans, we're able to address an even larger issue: veteran suicides. Veterans are 57% more likely than the average citizen to commit suicide. This disheartening statistic emphasizes the need for this bill and an effort to address firearm violence. I'd like to defer the rest of my time to Abe.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Thank you, honorable legislators. The proposal which Patrick is describing, on which SB 863 is based, is called Operation Healthy Homefront. It's a two-pronged approach to community violence that centers veterans and provides them jobs. Prong one is as follows. Veterans mentor youth at risk of firearm injury from community violence, with such youth recruited through hospital-based violence intervention programs. Prong 2 is this. Veterans teach gun safety training classes to adults in community centers and distribute gun safes to gun-owning adults. Patrick, Alley, and I created Operation Healthy Homefront in October for the Tulane University National Health Policy Case Competition. This competition sought public health solutions from students across the nation to the national and growing epidemic of gun violence. During the competition, our proposal on which SB 863 is based, Operation Healthy Homefront, was judged repeatedly by national public health experts. It was praised repeatedly, and in the end, our idea won over 41 other proposals from college teams across the nation. We were proud of this victory, but we could not stop there. We wanted to make our validated policy proposal a reality, and that's why we're here. As part of the veteran mentorship prong 1 that I described, veterans provide life skills training to youth based on a carefully developed curriculum that centers urban trauma. Mentorship includes conversations, sports, meals, and other proven activities that each youth may enjoy. Veterans will also be representative of the youth they serve. And in that second prong I was describing, the adult gun safety training, veterans focus on safe storage practices to reduce unintentional firearm injury, unauthorized access, and firearm suicide, and they will distribute gun safes. SB 863 would implement Operation Healthy Homefront as a pilot program with aims to eventually expand statewide. The program would begin in New Haven, and we envision it expanding rapidly far beyond there. We've already established strong partnerships with organizations doing this work on the ground. They are best positioned to implement SB 863. This includes the Urban Community Alliance and its Vets Mentor Program, as well as the Yale New Haven Hospital hospital-based violence intervention program. We are also in close contact with gun safety advocates who support SB 863, such as Kristen Song and Poe Murray. We also have had discussions with Commissioner Sadi and plan to partner with the DVA on recruitment of veterans for this program. SB 863 is backed by a broad coalition of relevant stakeholders. This is what I want to emphasize. These stakeholders have submitted written and oral testimony today, and they include the Connecticut Hospital Association, the Connecticut HVIP Collaborative, and the Newtown Action Alliance. These stakeholders are backing SB 863 because they recognize its potential to integrate and create new synergies among their already robust work combating community violence on the ground here in communities across Connecticut. I yield my time to Alley Dettelbach.
Thanks, Abe, and thank you so much for having us today. So why do we think that Operation Healthy Homefront, or SB 863, will work? That's because Operation Healthy Homefront combines 4 proven effective interventions in a novel way. SB 863 aims to enrich current community violence intervention programs rather to compete or to build completely new structures. This is why a body of research and the Connecticut organizations that practice community violence intervention every day, groups that Abe just mentioned, support SB 863. The first proven effective component of SB 863 is that it engages veterans. As we know, veterans' military service protect us. But on the home front, veterans are an untapped resource for safety and promoting the health of our communities. We know that veterans are committed to public service. We know they are more likely to be involved in extracurricular programs. We know they're mission-based, we know they thrive in team environments, and we know they're wise in experience. And lastly, we know that gun owners trust them. That is why we propose mobilizing veterans on the home front to make our communities safer. On the other side of the coin, as Patrick said, we also know that veterans are 57% more likely to commit suicide, and that joblessness is a key contributor to this outcome. For these reasons, Operation Healthy Homefront centers veterans with an immensely meaningful, mission-based, part or full-time employment opportunity. This provides not only supplemental income, but also a rich sense of purpose. The second component of SB 863 that we want to emphasize is that it recruits youth mentees for the mentorship program from a hospital-based violence intervention program, or an HVIP. HVIP recruiting means creating a partnership between local hospitals and community groups. It ensures that the people who, based on data, are more likely to be re-injured and re-hospitalized for firearm-based injuries, which is those who have already suffered from a firearm injury, receive targeted immediate access to prevention programs, mental health services, and other support. This is why HVIP sourcing reduces rehospitalization 7-fold and incarceration 4-fold. SB 863 also has the support of the Connecticut HVIP Collaborative for the integration of HVIP recruitment methods for youth. The third component we want to emphasize of SB 863 is the safe storage training and gun safe distribution component. Right now, 4.6 million American children live in households with at least one gun that is loaded and unlocked. Households that lock both firearms and ammunition have an 85% lower risk of unintentional firearm injuries among children and teens. This requires having a gun safe and safe storage training. Importantly, 35% of gun owners report a lack of safe storage classes, and those same gun owners report active duty service members and veterans as one of the only groups they would trust to deliver safe storage training, hence the novel combination and synergy that SB 863 offers. Finally, SB 863 uses youth mentorship. There is an abundance of evidence supporting youth mentorship as a way to combat community violence. Mentorship fosters social connection, meaningful relationship building, and positive reinforcement, all of which are proven to address the root causes of the cycle of violence in youth that Patrick mentioned. For these
Speaker
three-
time has elapsed. Please kindly summarize.
Yes. So in conclusion, we strongly urge you to support SB 863 because of the robust support that it has, and also because it provides an innovative yet evidence-backed approach to reducing community violence that centers and honors veterans. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you three for coming before us today on this very important topic. A question I would have would be what training is made available for our veterans to be able to go into the communities and do such work?
Certainly. Our program, Operation Healthy Homefront, will be sure to engage in screening of veteran mentors. Our program, Operation Healthy Homefront, would be sure to engage in screening of potential veteran mentors. And actually, this already happens at one of the partner organizations that we were describing, the Urban Community Alliance's Vets Mentor Program. They have a robust screening process for ensuring that the veterans that they hire for their veteran mentor programs are qualified and prepared to engage with youth. And in addition to that, there's also a robust clinically based program where the veteran mentors have access to mental health professionals throughout the mentorship program in case they need access to those services. Ali or Patrick, anything to add?
Senator Marks?
Thank you for coming and speaking to us today. It sounds like a great program. You're asking for you want it to be a pilot program in New Haven at first, right?
Yes, that is
And-
correct.
And what do you have mentors there? Do you have other, how do you propose to start this program in New Haven?
Yeah, so as Abe mentioned, we plan on partnering with Urban Community Alliance, which currently has a program called VETS, VETTS. And this program already supports a veterans mentorship program for youth. However, they could really use an increase in funding. We also plan to introduce a robust hospital-based violence intervention aspect to that recruitment. So this program already has a tremendous infrastructure, has already been proven to be successful and helpful in the community. But there are some components that we think we could enhance it even more with this bill.
Thank you. And just one other thing is a lot of times these ideas always start off here and are great. And then we send them to appropriations where they disappear and we never see them again. So will you be asking for any kind of state funding? How do you propose to fund your program?
So we will be requesting state funding, probably in the range of $150,000 to $200,000 in the case of this pilot program, depending on size. However, we are looking for a broad range of funding sources, but we believe that this amount of funding that I just described coming from the state would be extremely effective for a pilot program like this to be sustainable and to run effectively.
Representative McGee?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for coming before us today. I wanted to just share a few comments and a question that I have for you. What I love about what you all did together is you saw a need for something that you felt, needed to be implemented or changed or added to, and you created it. And I think that we We need more of that in society. We need more of people to see a space, feel the need and create it, be courageous and passionate about it to implement it. And so what I love is the integration between veterans and children. I love the mentorship component. I don't think that we realize that a lot of our social emotional ways will increase positively in society when we integrate intergenerational conversations, when we bring unlikely pairs together to form relationships. And statistically, we've seen many things improve in society when we pair adults with adolescents, when we pair the elderly with young people. And so one of the things, the statistics that you brought up was young people and how they're exposed to gun violence, and that's very true. Actually, I was reading something the other day that said that 3 million teens are exposed to gun violence every year. They're exposed to gun violence. And so there are many different ways in which people are tapping in to get creative, like the arts, to really change the way we see violence in our community. And so one of the ways I think is oftentimes very successful to implement a program like this, pilot programs like this, is we see oftentimes are in the school systems. And so if this was a program that wasn't mandatory, that was optional, maybe for a young person to attend an after-school program, there's drama, band, yoga, painting, whatever, fashion now for some schools, eco-friendly clubs. If this was a club that kids could attend after school, what would this look like in a classroom? How would you see this in a classroom type of environment?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And just to touch on the first bit of what you said briefly, we totally agree with the importance of intergenerational connection, especially across groups that might be able to relate from a perspective of maybe having experienced traumatic events or being able to relate on that level. To address your question about schools, we think that this is actually this is really similar to the way that we first conceived Operation Healthy Homefront when we submitted it to the competition. We really like that idea. In terms of having had discussions with community groups, we think that it makes the most sense to start off Operation Healthy Homefront in more of an individual one-to-one mentorship model, just because of certain challenges the community is facing. But we do see the value in bringing together cohorts, and we see the value in having large groups of youth together doing these activities with veterans. And so one component of SB 863, one thing that we hope to be able to do is to potentially get memberships to the YMCA for these youth and for veterans, so that hopefully we can begin to integrate the youth together to the point where one day such school programs that you mentioned might be a feasible possibility for those groups.
Okay.
And if I can add to that briefly. So currently the Vets Mentor program that we'd be building on is run outside of the schools, and it runs fairly effectively. I agree with Ali that schools could be a very potentially effective option in the future. And I also want to touch on what you said about veterans and these young people as an unlikely pair. They certainly are. But one thing I wanted to just be sure we highlight is that despite the fact that they're an unlikely pair, there's actually a huge likelihood that they will bond effectively and trust each other effectively, because both have experienced quite traumatic events and experiences. Both may be suffering from PTSD. And we think that's a really important aspect of the potential of this mentorship plan.
Thank you. I have one more question. After winning the competition for Operation Healthy Homefront, did you receive any monetary prizes or awards, any opportunities to expand mentorship for you all, to have advisors or maybe someone guiding and directing you on what you should do to expand your program so that it's successful?
So we did not. So from the program, we each received a $1,000 cash prize and the option of a $10,000 scholarship to the Tulane University School of Public Health if we choose to pursue that route. However, the competition itself did not provide us with any mentors. We sought that out on our own. We've had the good fortune of finding and working with extremely qualified mentors who are deeply involved in community violence intervention and prevention here in Connecticut, including Dr. Jim Donington, Johanna Schubert, and many others. And so we've created a community of mentors to help us hopefully implement this plan.
Thank you. Congratulations. I'm all set.
Thank you. And Representative Delaney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't speak long. I just wanted to do two things. One, to commend you all as students for your tenacity and thinking of this, and two, for your bravery and coming up here, and also, you know, as a U.S. Army sergeant, weapon discipline is something that my battle buddies and I deal with all the time. And to see the focus to not just be on rifle marksmanship and weapon accuracy, but on the discipline it takes to be able to accurately and professionally handle a firearm is very encouraging. So thank you for your bravery, and I commend you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I do not see any other, I do see Senator Gordon. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say thank you to the folks who are here testifying. I appreciate your wanting to be involved in the issue of violence with guns, and those who might commit violence or also who might hurt themselves, since we know there are a lot of people at risk for suicide. And I appreciate you coming and testify. I have a question, perhaps just so for my own edification, but I just wanted to make certain I'm clear about this bill and the program that you're testifying about, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Is this program and what's being proposed in SB 863 purely just looking at trying to partner, say, veterans with at-risk youth as far as mentoring with regarding trying to decrease the risk of violence or harm with guns? Is that purely what the focus is? That's my sense. I just wanted to make certain I'm understanding what exactly is being asked for and what the program actually is doing, or the pilot program looking to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that question. So just to clarify, Operation Healthy Homefront has two prongs. So the first prong is exactly what you just described. It's veterans mentoring at-risk youth sourced from a hospital violence intervention-based program. And then the second component is a gun safety training and gun safe distribution angle. So for this, veterans would be teaching gun safety classes at community centers and also distributing gun safes to gun owning adults who attend the gun safety training.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That does answer my questions right now.
Thank you. And if I see Representative Lanu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to echo what Senator Gordon said, and I want to thank you for your testimony today. Very much appreciate it. You touched on mentioning the cities and the urban areas, and that's certainly very important. I don't want to dismiss that, but I come from rural Connecticut, and where hunting is a big recreational activity, and actually a way of life for a lot of folks, for a food source. And could this program also be incorporated where veterans could teach kids how to hunting safety, how to properly hunt, and some of the safety measures involved in hunting, and being able to show them how to do it properly, how to spot what you're looking to hunt, and so on and so forth? Would that be incorporated in this program as well?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Representative Lanu. I think it's a great idea, and we'd be interested in thinking about it as we scope this prong to this gun safety training aspect of our plan.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would add in, I think the diversity of activities that veterans provide their mentees is really kind of the strength of the program, whether that's from basketball to music to fashion. The diversity and interest in activities is really the strength of the program here. You know, the veterans will take their mentees to recording studios and give them the opportunity to express themselves in a way creatively, so that they don't have to express themselves in a way that might hurt others. So hunting and fishing really is something great and provides that opportunity to both parties. And we'd love to see it incorporated in the future of our program.
Very good. I'm very happy to hear that. And there's many veterans that I know in my district that do hunt, and that are great role models. And We have a lot of great kids. So again, bringing them together, bringing these communities together, I think is certainly a commendable idea, and being able to see our veterans properly train our children and young people in the hunting and young adults, I think is important. So I very much appreciate your your enthusiasm and incorporate it into the program, and I look forward to seeing that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Once again, thank you three for coming before us. It was great to hear your enthusiasm and also your information that you provided for us to have further thought in regards to the bill that you're looking to push forward. So once again, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
We're going to go to State Representative Dubinsky.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairs, vice chairs, ranking members, and members of the Veterans Affairs Committee. I'm here today to testify on two bills. One is HB 5205, and the other is 5510. With regard to 5510, I wholeheartedly agree with Melissa Willett, who testified earlier with regard to adding the Space Force into the definition of armed forces. Now that there is a Space Force, I think it's just a matter of course that we update our statutes to include it. I don't frankly think that should be particularly controversial. With regard to 5205, I had introduced a bill which was 5206 that would exempt disabled veterans from having to pay the passport to parks fee. Thankfully, other representatives have also put in a similar bill, and I appreciate that the committee has raised a bill to exempt all veterans from the passport to parks fee. I put in my bill because I was approached by a severely disabled veteran, combat disabled veteran, who was very unhappy that he was required to pay a fee to register his handicap accessible van that it's a specialized van that he's able to drive around in, but he is not able to take advantage of any of the state parks, and making it more difficult and expensive for him to maintain his mobility is really not something that I think we should be doing as a legislature. So exempting him and other veterans from this fee when they register their vehicles, I think is the least we can do to support our veterans. Now, I know that bills come up every year that add benefits or exempt veterans from various expenses and fees and things like that. But I think this one in particular is one we really need to look at, because most of the time when bills come in that exempt veterans from paying fees, it's paying fees for things that they take advantage of. In many instances, the veterans, at least the ones that I represent, are not able to take advantage of those opportunities with regard to parks. So paying the fee, I think, is a slap in the face to them. And I'd appreciate if the committee seriously considers House Bill 5205. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Dubisky. Is there any questions? Representative Porter?
Thank you, Representative. Hi, Representative. Just a quick question. You said he introduced 5206. Was 5206 introduced to the Veterans Committee or the Environment Committee?
You know, I'm really not sure which committee it found its way to. You know, as you know, we put in our bills and somebody other than us gets to decide where they go. I'm really not sure which committee it went to. I was certainly hoping it would go to veterans. If you haven't seen it, perhaps it didn't. But you know, I think veterans really is where this concept belongs. And, you know, whether my particular bill went there or not, I don't know.
Okay, great. The only reason I was asking is because I believe it belongs to veterans as well. Eventually we'll have to go to appropriations, but I put in a similar bill to environment, and I know you're in environment, so I was just going to suggest you keep an eye on it and that committee as well. Because no matter what committee we get it passed through, I think it's important we try to get it passed together.
I most certainly will keep an eye on that. Thank you.
Sure. And then I just wanted to, add a little color commentary about, we just got done talking about mental health of our veterans and being able to provide access to the parks where they can fish, where they can walk, where they can just, get some serenity is also very important. So not just about the fees, but about the mental health benefits for our veterans as well. I had a veteran here this morning that was going to testify. He actually had to leave. His name is Marty Richards. He's a Vietnam veteran, and he was here with a group that has been advocating for this. So hopefully this is the year we get it over the finish line. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I do note that prior to the Passport to Parks concept, where everybody had to pay with regard to when they registered their cars, veterans were exempt in many cases from the fees to enter some of the parks. So, we actually took that benefit away from them for Passport to Parks. And, I do agree with you that the Veterans Committee is the place that should remedy that wrong.
Thank you, Representative. Just so many of you know, there were multiple bills that came in regards to multiple things. So some bills were combined, and it wasn't that someone's bill wasn't important. It was the number that came up to represent that bill that had multiple bills that were combined, just so people.
Right, and I certainly appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. I don't take any offense that this is a committee bill. And in fact, I'm very grateful that it is. I understand that there were a number of bills on a similar topic, and it certainly makes sense to put them together into a committee bill for the committee to work on.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, it was all bills that came in were changed to committee bills. Just so people know that it was a bill from the whole committee, not just individuals. Thank you, Representative Dubinsky.
Thank you.
No other questions. I don't see any online. We're going to go to number 14, Thomas Rocket. How you doing, sir?
Yes, good morning or good afternoon, depending on the time. Chairman Nolan and members of the committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in support of Senate Bill 636. I'm a member of the American Legion in Branford, Connecticut. I'm also a member of the Veterans of Foreign Wars post 102, 106 in Branford, Connecticut. I'm a Vietnam veteran, having served there in 1968 and 1969. This is an important issue for veterans and their families. I support Senate Bill 636 because it will establish a process to resolve complaints in those situations where a veteran's gravesite is not being properly maintained. Most of the facts surrounding this issue are not disputed. There are perpetual care cemeteries in Connecticut in which veterans' footstones are well maintained. There are other perpetual care cemeteries in Connecticut in which these same markers are poorly maintained. Today, you will hear testimony and see pictures of some of those stones. If you have the opportunity to walk through a cemetery, many of these markers look like they have been swallowed up by the earth. While some may say that this is illusory because the grass has grown, it has been my experience that this is not the case with many of these markers. Many markers have receded below ground level because of either an improper foundation or no foundation. We all know, as we sit here today, that veterans have made countless sacrifices for our country. We have Memorial Day parades to honor those who have given their life. We have Veterans Day parades. When our veteran passes, the government provides a marker so he or she can be honored and remembered. That marker serves as a beacon to assist volunteers to place flags on veterans' grave, be it Memorial Day or Veterans Day. That marker also assists volunteers so that when wreaths across America come here, they can place a wreath on a veteran's grave. When those footstones or markers are covered by the earth, they're no longer visible and veterans are ignored. At present, there is no Connecticut statute that provides a mechanism for resolving a complaint that a veteran's grave is improperly maintained. Some will say the state has no jurisdiction. Others will say that markers and monuments are not owned by the cemetery, therefore there is no duty to take care. Both of these positions should be ignored as they are excuses, not a solution to the problem. No one that I've spoken to is looking for a solution that penalizes or punishes anyone. Rather, we are seeking the
Speaker time has
adoption
elapsed.
of a
Please kindly
process
summarize.
that will facilitate a resolution. Again, in those situations where a cemetery is subject to an association or owned by a church, there is no viable avenue to resolve this issue. We are looking for a process whereby an individual can file a complaint and obtain a resolution. Put another way, if a cemetery that is under the jurisdiction of an association or a church is unable to maintain a veteran's grave, we are confident that Senate Bill 636 establishes a process whereby the Department of Consumer Protection, together with the Department of Veterans Affairs Cemetery Board and the Cemetery Association, will collaborate to find a just solution to fix the problem. There is a Connecticut statute that offers some guidance. Section 19A 308, Care of Neglected Cemeteries, states the following: in any town in which there is a burial ground or cemetery not under the control or management of a currently functioning cemetery association that has been neglected and allowed to grow weeds, briars, and bushes, or where fences are broken, decayed, or dilapidated, the selectmen of such town may cause such burial ground to be cleared of the weeds, etc. Using this statute, one could make a complaint to the town to seek a resolution for the upkeep of a veteran's grave. A similar law could be enacted for those cemeteries under control of an association using the Department of Consumer Protection.
So your time has elapsed, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, I'll conclude. Thank you. Lastly, I would strongly argue that the Honorable Senator Cohn's proposed Bill 636 is indeed good public policy. The state is Connecticut has honored and provided exceptional services to veterans during their life. There is no reason the same shouldn't apply when a veteran passes. As one of my colleagues so eloquently said, this bill will ensure that veterans' graves are maintained with the reverence and dignity they so deserve in their final resting place. Thank you for allowing me to provide testimony today.
Thank you, sir, for coming before us, and we appreciate the handouts that went around to show some examples of what you're referencing. And it is sad to see some of our veterans that are buried in those places that have graves stones that are buried or that look as such. So we hope to try and make some changes so that that doesn't happen. But again, thank you for coming before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Anyone have anything else? Senator Gordon, I see.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I just want to thank the person who's testifying for testifying today. I do share the concern. We know we all share about wanting to make certain that veterans' graves and grave sites are upkept. One question I have, just so I can better understand what is being discussed, is if a veteran is buried and resting in a private cemetery association, no control by a municipality or by the state, and if this bill were to go through and become law, is this being looked at, and through you, Mr. Chairman, my question is this being looked at to have teeth to it, where the state would then have to go and enforce and take potential action at some point against a private cemetery association? Many cemetery associations, especially small ones in small towns, may not have much in the way of any resources to do what they might do. And there can be sometimes differences of opinion with what might be considered good upkeep versus someone thinking it isn't good upkeep, and how private cemetery associations might handle if they get an influx of complaints that then the state needs to look into. I'm just trying to understand the mechanics of how a complaint process might work, and ultimately what type of enforcement action is being looked at through this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, thank you. Do you have a response, sir?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the question. In those situations that are controlled, private cemetery where it's controlled by a board, naturally, the first place to go would be to the board. But there are some cemeteries where there's been no response at all to an individual's complaint. So the concept in this bill is to set up a process whereby a family member can file a complaint with perhaps the Department of Consumer Protection or the Department of Public Health. And then the Veterans Advisory Committee that would be formed would look at that complaint and hopefully be able to convince the cemetery that is involved that this is an important issue and it needs to be addressed. I trust that answers your question, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just ask a follow-up question through you. That does, and one other question I have, if you don't mind, sir, is I'm just trying to understand the process. Does this create two separate processes? A process that if someone's family of a non-veteran has a complaint about a cemetery association, there's one pathway they take, perhaps through existing law that was cited. And then if a family has a veteran who is resting in a cemetery, this would be a different process, or is it all the same process no matter whether it's a veteran or not? It would just be that if it's a veteran's grave, it would tie in the VA department. Thank you.
Yes, I think it would be, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, sir.
Oh, no, I was just thanking our distinguished chairman for letting me ask a second question.
Okay, yes, I would envision this as one process. There are some grave sites that have flat stones that are non-veterans that the same thing happens to. They get swallowed up by the earth. So I would consider this initially as a complaint for an individual to the Department of Consumer Protection or the Department of Public Health. And if there's a veteran involved, it could then go to the Veterans Affairs Committee. If not, it could be handled internally, but it'd be one process.
Thank you, Senator. Are you all set?
I am all set. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Now, as of now, if I'm not mistaken, there is a process through the Department of Consumer Protection. Are you finding that that process is not working?
As far as I know, sir, there is no process right now. My understanding was that about 30 years ago, there was some legislation for some limited jurisdiction by the Department of
Okay,
Consumer Protection or Public Health, but that failed. And so there is no process right now for those cemeteries that are controlled by an association or a society.
okay. Thank you. Any other questions? No, thank you, sir, for coming before us.
Thank you for your
Appreciate it.
time today.
State Representative Christine Conley next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Chair Nolan, Chair Marks, the ranking members and the vice chairs. I appreciate you having me today to speak about two bills. House Bill 5049, which is childcare services, as well as House Bill 5510. I want to speak about the childcare services bill first, as someone had spoke about it prior, and I had a little bit more information to add. This is a bill that will allow federally licensed members or household members of service members to have childcare development within their homes. This bill will allow those who carry the federal license to be able to use that license while they happen to be stationed in Connecticut with their family members, and allow them to continue to work easily in transition from state to state or internationally, keeping their work and providing extra income to their families. Currently, the federal licensures, which were monitored by the DOD and the Coast Guard, have standards that are more strict than our state standards. So the safety standards are equal to or more strict than our Connecticut standards. Thus, children would be not at any risk or harm. This bill is added to what many of us have been doing for several years, which is to allow military service members to transition their work easily while they're residing here in Connecticut, be it for 2 years or be it for 20 years. It would allow families to continue to work seamlessly and would also help with our much needed issue of childcare in the state of Connecticut. I do have the pleasure of representing the Navy base, and I know that Rep. Nolan has the pleasure of representing the Coast Guard Academy. So we have military families who are living on premises, on base, and off base that have these licenses and are currently not able to use them unless they file for their state licenses. So this would remove red tape and provide no harm, as the federal standards are more strict than the state standards. I do want to point out that the Office of Early Child Care did submit written testimony in support of this bill and noted that the safety standards are equal to and exceed the federal standards, equal to and exceed the state standards. Additionally, I wanted to speak about the Space Force. I think it's important that as we look at our bills from time to time, we update. And since the Space Force has been in existence since 2019, and we didn't update right away, but 2020 gave us a surprise that we weren't expecting. Now that we've had time to look at things and COVID has passed and we're able to do hearings and update our bills, adding the Space Force in is important because members who are veterans of the Space Force who may be residing in our state would have the full benefits of members of any other branch of our military. Thank you, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Representative Conley. I know we have been inundated with concerns from constituents and especially on the military base in regards to those bills. So I'm glad that you came forward and presented what you presented to us and made the connections possible to make sure that we can put bills in to represent those that are looking for that change. Any other questions? Senator Marks.
Thank you, Representative Conley. I too, the Coast Guard Academy is in my district. Representative Conley, I'm glad that you compared the two, the federal and then Connecticut. Do you know how long it takes right now for somebody who wants to also get, I guess, reciprocity in Connecticut, how long it takes them?
In speaking with the Office of Early Childhood Development, it would be dependent based on the individual's needs as to what they needed, if they needed additional certifications in the state of Connecticut, if they need to take classes in the state of Connecticut, or if they had all those classes, depending on what state they came from. So it could be months. And if someone is only stationed here for 2 years, they may not do the effort of the licensure. They may find another job that is possibly less paying, but easier to obtain at one of our other local businesses, and then not utilize their license for the 2 years. So this would allow folks to utilize the licenses that they already have seamlessly.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Thank you, Representative Conley, for your discussion today.
Thank you.
Sorry, Jamie DePaula. Probably a C was. Okay. Next would be Senator DiCaprio. Or State Representative DiCaprio, sorry. Are you online? We're gonna go to Bob Dorr. Bob Dorr. Yeah. And then we're going to go to Representative Hartley. I'm sorry, Senator Hartley. Is her staff member on? No. Let's try Representative Baker.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Senator Mark, Representative Nolan, Representative Delaney, and Representative Bell, and our distinguished members and the veterans. I'm here to speak before you for HJ 22. I submitted my testimony, so I'm not gonna read it. I know in respects to our time here, and here I have sitting next to me, Dr. Kearney, and she's gonna claim some of my time. But before I do that, I just wanted to just kind of make some remarks in regards to, this platoon, which was known as 6888, was a group of Afro-American Latino women who served in the World War II. When I first heard about it, I was excited, I was shocked, and I felt emotionally overwhelmed in terms of how this group of women, how they got past the history books, and how I was never able to hear about them. I thought about back in the 1940s and what they were up against. As many of you that sit on the committee, you make that commitment to join the armed forces, and the strength of the willpower, the mentalness that they might have gone through, and to be dedicated through all of the barriers and things that they had to go through to serve their country, to protect the future of the next generation, man. It's just proud to know about them. And this is an honor that is well overdue. Before I turn the mic over to Dr. Kearney, I just wanted to just share one thing. As I began to do the research on them, one of the things that I found out, the connection that one of the women, which there were 11 women which were from Connecticut. One of the women was from Hartford. Her name was Mary J. Barlow. Her brother was actually one of the first Afro-American senators here in Connecticut, along with Afro-American. He was the first Afro-American judge in Connecticut. So to me, that is an honor alone for us to look into one of our own, a descendant of one of our own. So at this time, I'm going to turn the mic over to Dr. Kearney, who's going to share some of the information.
Good afternoon to the honorable chairs and members of the Committee of Veterans Affairs. My name is Dr. Sheila Kearney, and I am the niece of Major Mary Frances Kearney, Commanding Officer, Company A 6888. I am here to request your consideration and approval for a state resolution of highest regard honoring the contributions of World War II 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion of the Women's Army Corps. In November 1944, the U.S. War Department lifted the ban of African-American women in the U.S. Army Corps WACs, leading to the formation of the 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion. The 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion was a unique U.S. Army unit of 855 predominantly Black women, also women of Puerto Rican, Mexican, Native American, and Australian heritages. The Army referred to the group as the Colored or Negro WAC unit during that time. The 6888 was the only such WAC unit to be deployed overseas during World War II and was assigned to the European Theater of Operations from February 12th, 1945 to March 2nd, 1946. 855 women, 824 enlisted, and 31 African-American officers served in the 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion, nicknamed the 6888. The specific mission of the 6888 Battalion in World War II was to sort, redirect, censor, and repackage mail on behalf of the American Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Red Cross members, families, politicians, military technical support, and civilian personnel stationed in the ETO. The 6888 officers trained at Fort Des Moines, Iowa, and the 6888 Battalion trained at Fort Oglethorpe in Georgia. They learned to identify enemy aircraft, ships, weapons, to climb ropes, jump trenches, and crawl under logs wearing gas masks, to board and evacuate ships, and to do long marches with rucksacks. In February 1945, the first contingent of 6888 embarked from Camp Schank, New York, to sail for Britain, and their ship, the Ile-de-France, survived close encounters with Nazi U-boats. They arrived in Glasgow, Scotland, where a German V-1 rocket exploded near the dock, causing the women to run for cover. Upon arrival by train to Birmingham, England, the battalion confronted warehouses stacked to the ceilings with letters and packages. Despite enduring inhumane working conditions, dark, unheated, rat-infested aircraft hangars with broken windows, and air raids, the battalion created a new mail tracking system, worked 3 separate 8-hour shifts, 7 days per week to process an average of 65,000 parcels per shift, 195,000 pieces of mail daily, and cleared the multi-year backlog of mail in months. Having resolved the immense mail backlog in Birmingham, the 6888 Battalion sailed to France for their next assignment in Rouen, France, where they encountered undelivered mail dating back 2 to 3 years, which the battalion successfully processed and cleared in 3 months. After concluding their final assignment in Paris, the last of the battalion returned to the United States aboard the ship Claymont Victory and was disbanded in March of 1946 at Fort Dix, New Jersey, with no parades, public appreciation, or official recognition for their accomplishments. The battalion adhered to the motto, "No mail, low morale," and provided essential support to the U.S. military in the European theater by linking service members to their loved ones back home, thereby achieving unprecedented success, and efficiency in solving the military's postal problems. The 688 Battalion was the largest contingent of African-American and other women of color to ever serve overseas. They dispelled stereotypes and represented a change in racial and gender roles in the military. On February 25th, 2009, the 688 Central Postal Directory Battalion was honored by President Barack Obama at the Women in Military Service for America Memorial at Arlington National Cemetery. And on November 30th, 2018, a $250,000 monument inscribed Women of Determination, Dedication, and Distinction was dedicated to the 688 Battalion at the Buffalo Soldier Monument Park at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. The 688 was awarded the Women's Army Corps Service Medal, the European African Middle Eastern Campaign Medal, the Army Good Conduct Medal, and the World War II Victory Medal. On February 28th, the Army approved the Army's Meritorious Unit Commendation for the 688. And on March 14th, 2022, President Joe Biden signed the bill for the Congressional Gold Medal for the 688, the only women's military unit to receive this medal. 10 members of the 688 Battalion were then residents of the state of Connecticut at the time of enlistment. They include Mary J. Barlow, who was killed in France. Also Sergeant Dolores Mercedes Brown from Bridgeport, who was also killed in France. Private First Class Bernadine Frazier, Private First Class Audrey Elizabeth Harris, Private First Class Marion Sarah Jackson, Private Margaret Beatrice Janer, Major Mary Frances Kearney, Private First Class Elizabeth McNair, and Private Margaret May Powell, and finally, Private First Class Anna Tarek. I submit this on behalf of these wonderful ladies and ask your support to honor them as they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you for coming
Mhm.
before us. This is amazing history, Black history, that is so important to our communities. And I just wish we could have known a lot sooner about this so that we could have done something even greater than what you're presenting. And it doesn't mean that we can't do something greater. It just means that I wish we had an opportunity prior to have the knowledge that you have allowed us to research and look at. And this is part of education that our youth need to understand, us adults need to understand, so that we can bring it to the forefront to make sure that people realize how Black women have implemented themselves into history where they're not recognized. And it is definitely something I believe we should do. Just quickly, do you know if we have any family members in Connecticut, or has there been any research done to try and find out?
All of the service members are deceased. Right now, nationally, there are only 4 who are alive, and they are all 100 and above. I am the only person in Connecticut. I am desperately trying to find other family members of these women so that they can share and be on board to receive the Congressional Gold Medal on their family members' behalf.
Well, it is something, Representative Baker is right next door to me upstairs, so it is something that I can tell you that we are going to pursue in trying to find out if we can locate any family members so that we can have something also in Connecticut to make sure that we recognize those that were in the 688.
Right. A member of the Army is currently doing research to find their cities of origin so that I could submit that to you.
Well, that would be greatly appreciated. Any other comments, or questions? Vice Chair Delaney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Baker, for putting this before us. And ma'am, I just wanted to say very quickly, when I was stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, right alongside with the Triple Nichols, I actually studied about your family members and the work that they did. So
Wonderful.
yeah,
Thank you.
it's as a Black soldier, I was very happy to read that, and it's an honor to meet you here today.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else? No. Thank you so much. And I'm sure Representative Baker has your contact information.
Yes.
So that we can maybe have a meeting. Go ahead, Representative Baker.
I just wanted to just add one thing for those of you who weren't aware of Boslow Senator. He, as you go out on the before you hit the tunnel, you look on the side of the board, the wall. His name is over there.
Okay.
And I have been started to do some research here, reach out to some older legislators to find out if there are some connected family descendants here in Connecticut area or in the Hartford area. So, you know, we do have some work to do, but, you know, I think the important thing is for us to try to educate our next generation and what our contributions were to this country and stuff. So, you know, I look forward to working with each and every one of you. Thank you.
Well, I definitely agree with that, but I'll just rewind and say, we need to let the now generation also understand how important and some of the invisible things that need to be brought to light. So thank you again for coming, and thank you, Representative Baker.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Our next speaker will be Adam Fuchs. Adam Fuchs.
Yes, hello.
Are you online?
Yes.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing? Good afternoon. And thank you all for giving me this opportunity here to support or to briefly speak on my support for Bill 636 and concerning the upkeep of veterans' graves. I would like to begin by telling a story. Last summer, my children are part of a Brantford scout troop, and we went to cemetery to clean out some of the veterans' graves, and it was a long day and a lot of graves. So it just, I mean, while volunteers are important in maintaining a lot of these sites, it would also be nice for the families to have some method of approaching these facilities to get, you know, the care they deserve and have earned. And my only concern with this bill is that I'm not sure if it's going to become too complicated for the family. So if there's a way that we can ensure the efficiency and effectiveness, that would go a long way. But I just wanted to briefly say that, yes, I do support this bill, and I think that I'm a veteran. But beyond myself, I think everyone in the state of Connecticut would appreciate having a bill like this in place to support the upkeep of the veterans' graves and grave sites. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for coming before us. I don't know if you watched earlier that topic was also raised, and it is very important to us in regards to making sure that these graves are taken care of responsibly. So we hope to see changes in that matter. Any other legislators? No. Thank you for coming before us.
Thank you.
And next we have State Senator Kelly. And I'm sure he's on another meeting also. So we'll come back to Senator Kelly And we will go to Mary Grande.
Randy,
Mary.
thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Mary Grandy. I'm from Branford, Connecticut, here to testify in support of proposed Senate Bill number 636, introduced by Senator Christine Cohen of the 12th District. Thank you to the Committee on Veterans and Military Affairs for holding this hearing. We honor our military and our veterans when they are alive. Our current military servicemen and women and veterans are the reason our country has remained free for all these years. I'm the proud granddaughter of a World War I veteran, a niece to an uncle who served in World War II, a daughter-in-law to a wonderful father-in-law in World War II, and the proud daughter of a dad of the Korean War. It's because of their bravery and so many others that we honor them always. They are our heroes, and upon death, we should continue to honor their service of the country. Unfortunately, this is not always the case, which is the reason we ask that you approve the proposed Bill 636. This bill will allow for a process of consumer complaints of neglect of veterans' graves in cemeteries to be filed, and will give the Department of Consumer Protection and the Department of Veterans Affairs the ability to look into these complaints. For too long, our families looked for recourse against the neglect, who have signed perpetual care agreements with cemeteries that may not be living up to this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that, living up to that agreement. It is my hope that this committee will understand the pain that this brings to veteran families when visiting a loved one and to see the neglect at their grave. Many cannot themselves take care of the graves of their loved ones. And I do believe establishing a cemetery board within the Department of Veterans is a correct step. It will allow the Department of Veterans to coordinate with the Department of Consumer Protection to look into those complaints. It is a positive step and a necessary one for families of military loved ones. For families, there has not been this ability, an unfortunate one to say the least. This bill will allow for families to have the ability to work toward a solution together with the cemeteries. We owe this to our veterans who are in their final earthly resting place. Thank you for considering this bill, and thank you to each of the committee members for your work you do today and for the citizens of Connecticut. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for coming before us on this important manner.
Thank you.
Representative Delaney. Vice Chair, did you have something? No? Anyone else? Thank you once again.
Thank you.
And we are going to go to Senator Cohen. Are you on? All right, we're going to come back to Senator Cohen also. Jeffrey DeWitt. No.
Good afternoon, honorable co-chairs, vice chairs, and members of the committee. My name is Jeffrey DeWitt, a resident of Norwalk, and I'm here to testify in support of Senate Bill number 944, an act appropriating funds for the maintenance of the National Iwo Jima Memorial in the city of New Britain. I am a 26-year active duty veteran and retiree of the Air Force. I'm a member of the board of directors and the historian for the Iwo Jima Memorial Historical Foundation. My primary task with the foundation is to research and document the 100 Connecticut residents who died in the Battle of Iwo Jima and whose names are inscribed on the National Iwo Jima Memorial. The foundation and the monument are one of a kind. The foundation was formed by survivors of the battle who were dedicated to building the monument, so much so that they made sure rocks and sand from the island of Iwo Jima were made a part of it. That, to me, is a higher level of dedication to their mission and very inspiring. The foundation and the monument are one of a kind. And I'm asking that the National Iwo Jima Memorial in New Britain be added to the list of veteran-related parks and monuments the state maintains. We are asking for expenses up to $27,800, which was our expenses in 2022. If the state would assume responsibility for these expenses, the foundation can focus on ceremonies and fundraising. 60,000 Americans fought in the battle. 17,000 were wounded, 6,824 died, which included 100 from Connecticut. 18 of the 100 never saw their 19th birthday. The average age was 22.3 years old. 17 of them were married. Edward Joseph de Saltels, a demolition expert from Putnam, Connecticut, was the sole Army loss. Technical Sergeant William Frank Caldwell, an engineer and top turret gunner on a B-24 Liberator, nicknamed the Royal Flush, was born in Waterford and grew up in Towland. He is MIA, having been shot down in the South Pacific. And it's hard to believe based on his year of birth, but he still has 5 siblings that are still alive in the Towland area. 7 of the 100 were in the United States Navy and the rest in the Marine Corps. Benny Amarone, alphabetically the first name on the list, came from a family of 17 children in New Haven. His nickname was Swish because of his skills on the basketball court. Robert Armstrong was the captain of the Hartford High School baseball team. Richie Barella from New Hartford was a Silver Star Medal recipient. Part of the citation for the medal reads, voluntarily crawled to an exposed position in order to fire more effectively upon the fanatic Japanese, and pouring a deadly stream of rifle fire on the hostile position, succeeded in annihilating 2 machine guns.
Speaker time has elapsed. Please kindly summarize.
Well, thank you. That goes fast. The victory in Iwo Jima helped turn the tide of the war and helped lead to the surrender of the Japanese on September 2nd, 1945, also known as VJ Day. Please add the Iwo Jima Memorial in New Britain to the list of monuments and parks around the state that the state maintains. Honor our veterans and Connecticut's involvement in the Battle of Iwo Jima by preserving the legacy of those who survived and the 100 from Connecticut who made the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you for this opportunity and for your dedication to the committee.
Thank you, sir, for coming before us. And I believe Representative Poulos.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. I take great interest in the Iwo Jima Memorial. Back in my undergraduate college years, I did some research on that in a military science class, and there were truly heroes there on that island. You mentioned the financial amount of $27,800 as the cost, not to exceed that as the cost for this appropriation. And my question is, and you referenced it as the expenditures, I believe from last year.
Sure.
Is this a reoccurring expense that you would anticipate? And if it has been reoccurring, I might not have heard through the recording, but where previously did this money come from?
So private donations, as I understand, is primarily where the money came from. There is an eternal flame that burns there, as you're probably aware of, and that cost alone for the gas is $6,000 a year. Maintenance costs, including snow removal and leaf and grass cutting, leaf removal and grass cutting, that was roughly $4,500. I believe there's somebody in attendance there, Elaine Schieffer, who is the treasurer of the Iwo Jima Foundation. She could probably address more specifically the costs that went into the maintenance last year.
Mm-hmm. So is this a one-time appropriation request that this bill is calling for?
I believe this we're requesting the park and the monument be maintained in perpetuity by the state of Connecticut.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. I don't see any further questions. Have a nice day, sir.
You as well.
Senator Cohen, are you on?
I am, Representative. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am so honored to be before the Veterans Committee today. Senator Marks, Representative Nolan, Senator Gordon, and Representative Vale, and members of the Veterans Committee. Just want to start by saying thank you first and foremost for raising or reserving SB 636, an act concerning upkeep of veterans' graves, for a public hearing today. You've already heard from several of my constituents And if you haven't already seen my testimony, you will be receiving the same very soon in written format. So I won't necessarily go through verbatim, but what you probably gather from the testimony that you've heard today is that a group of constituents came to me with a concern over the upkeep of veterans' graves in specifically the town of Branford. And upon doing some research with them and looking for an avenue for a complaint, we determined that there was no such avenue in the state of Connecticut. Since you've heard from folks who have gone and taken matters into their own hands, working on a volunteer basis to clear veterans' grave sites, but there's other situations as well with stones unkept or turned, and more serious issues that perhaps a volunteer organization wouldn't be able to take care of, as they'd be on private property in many cases. We've heard that the DCP has a process. We've heard that DPH has a process. At the time, I called Commissioner Sadi and asked if they had a process, and there is a lot of the other guys responsible. So a lot of pointing fingers. Everybody thinks there's a process in place, but it does not seem that there is. And so what this bill before the committee does would create a board for a resolution process to take place so that either family members or friends or just onlookers can file a complaint and have it reviewed by a board, an unbiased board, and hopefully take action so that these veterans can be honored in their death as well. They've given so much for our country, and they should certainly be honored forevermore. So thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions from the committee.
Any questions from any members of the committee? Once again, thank you for coming before us, Senator. We appreciate you responding to your constituents in the way you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Be well.
And I look, and it looks like William McMullen.
Former executive director of the U.S. State Boston, and I'm also representing the Camden Veterans. My interest in this is Bill 636, the upkeep of trade, comes from experience that I've had as an official of the city of New Haven. I was called in the engineering department to go out and look at some possible erosion problems. Small field before the storm. And when we got there, I found fellow changing soil. When I got back to the office to pull the file out, I found out it was Sunday. There were no signs. There was nothing to indicate Sunday. Turns out it was the military provisions in the Haven. In doing my research, I found that there were 27 veterans buried in this field. The grass is about 2.5 feet high. It's supposed to be maintained by the, I'm sorry, it's supposed to be maintained by the city of New Haven, the Parks Department. They elected because of funding sources not to do this. So basically, all of the graves, including the 27 veterans, in my mind, were desecrated. In my research, I found that the cemetery was in business for the city since 1927, and the last burial being in 1986. And what they did for them was they recorded their name, the date they were buried, and they're all given a little 4x6 piece of concrete with a metal number stamped on the top. No monument, no name, no nothing. This was it. And they all had sunk by the time I got to this site. So it appears to be an abandoned field. I went to the town or the city rather, and they didn't have any funds to do anything about this. So I bought a fence and I created a sign, put it up, and I started doing research on the veterans. I found that six were from World War II, 3 from the Korean conflict, and 7 from Vietnam. All those before that were veterans of the Great War and had probably died during the Depression, since there are no real records about them. Listening to the testimony from the other folks, we all seem to be on the same page for this. And I know that you've asked if there are any ideas you have that might be different to maybe help this. And
Speaker time has elapsed. Please kindly summarize.
yes, quickly, rather than maybe creating another committee, which is in itself sort of another bureaucracy, maybe you should have an appointment at a state level as an administrator for this, who then can work with all cemeteries, whether private, public, whatever, and deals only with veterans' graves. That kind of simplifies it, makes it veterans only, and then the mechanics of how this is done, paid, unpaid, whatever, when it gets to appropriations, is hammered out then. But I'll say that we really definitely need something to, as my predecessor said, level the playing field and give these people the kind of burial that they deserve. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, sir, for coming before us. Are there any questions? No. Thank you. Have a nice day, sir. And our next person will be Ed Zach Jr.
Hi there.
How you doing, sir?
Okay. I'll keep this short, okay? I don't want to, I'll take up your time as much. There's 2 packets here for you. And there's the 3 subjects.
Yeah.
The first is if I could share with you the photos, okay? These are teenagers and veterans who have served. Okay. This one right here. Okay. These are veterans who are being commended by Major General DeCoutneau for their historic endeavors. This will explain it. This is Mr. Bucks, and he was there this past summer with his son in the Boy Scouts. They were clearing the veteran markers. He was very stunned of the conditions. Okay. The gratitude of the veterans have sacrificed and served is this. Okay, covered with weeds. I'm sorry, it's wrong. These are Connecticut people. Okay, residents. These are teenagers who sacrificed and served. Okay, that's fine. Now there's for supporting. I'm sorry to get emotional, but this is flat out wrong. These are veterans that have to be covered with weeds, and they don't do a damn thing. I'm sorry to be this way, but it's the truth. And there's 4 years of stories here from 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2023 of the conditions of cemeteries in Connecticut. you, as a committee has the power to change this. I can't. Sue can't. Tom can't. We together. This is wrong, but it has to come from you. Okay, to
Speaker
support.
time has elapsed. Please kindly summarize.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then the final thing is I felt like a ping pong ball for the past couple of years. This is the words I apologize if it's wrong. I went to DPH. They told me to go to DCP. DCP tells me to go back to DPH. So I go back to DCP. DCP agrees by senior management in writing that the state of Connecticut has no department that a person could turn to. And I got it in writing by senior management. Therefore, this is the results. Besides that, it's the families who are in tears. Okay, thank you for your time.
Sir, I appreciate you coming before us, and giving us the actual photos of some of the things that you're talking about. It is a concern for us, and it is something that falls in our lap, and something that we need to put our eyes in to make sure that we are held accountable to make the changes that are needed. If you can forward any materials that you just talked about, any literature from the state in regards to them telling you that there's nothing, so that we can share and have a reason to make sure that there is something to help with that.
You know, I apologize. It's just yes, I will. Do I get that to you or to whom?
You can send it to Dallas and.
Okay. There's at one cemetery, there's 2,000 veterans. Okay. In this condition. Okay, statewide, it's many thousands. So it's not about me. Okay, it's about these and the families. It's wrong. Sorry. Look, I've seen too many tears of people are trying to clear their markers. Sorry.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions or comments from anyone? No. Once again, thank you for coming before us and bringing us the information that you have.
Please
bring us.
do something. If not, this would just continue and get worse. It will. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Peter DePaolo. I'm sorry. John Connett. Joanna Schubert. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, distinguished committee members. Thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Johanna Schubert. I am the director of the statewide Connecticut Hospital Violence Intervention Program Collaborative. You heard earlier from our collaborators, the students from Yale, who talked about a program that they have innovated, won awards for, and are trying to get launched here in Connecticut. My job here today is to talk a little bit about what HVIP is and what that means, and to introduce ourselves as a collaborative to you and your committee. So HVIP stands for Hospital Violence Intervention Program. It's a specific evidence-based methodology that involves partnerships between hospitals and frontline street level violence intervention programs. We here in the city of Hartford started one of the first HVIP programs in the nation, 6th in the nation, 1st in the state of Connecticut, and that was in 2004. Since then, the partnership that was started between St. Francis Hospital and Hartford Communities That Care has served over 2,200 victims and their families who have been impacted by violence. In 2019, just before the pandemic hit, after a legislative forum on community violence that was led by Hartford Community Care, the Connecticut Hospital Violence Collaborative was born. This roundtable includes the Hartford HVIP partnership that I just spoke about between St. Francis Hospital and Hartford Community Care, as well as Yale New Haven Hospital. They have an HVIP partner in the Urban Community Alliance. You heard a little bit about them from the students, as it's their program, VETS, that we're trying to align their new programming with, as well as Hospital Partners Connecticut Children's Medical Center, Hartford Hospital, and emerging VIP partners in Bridgeport and Waterbury and the Connecticut Hospital Association, as well as other stakeholders. The collaborative is the convening body for those doing this hospital-based violence intervention work in Connecticut, and we stand on 3 pillars. 1, to provide access to training and technical assistance for those who are interested in hospital-based or hospital-linked violence intervention best practices. 2, we strive for continuity and benchmarks in research and data, because we know that as data is collected and we can see trends of violence across the state, we're better able to meet those trends and respond to them. And 3, we consider it a pillar to build relationships across the spectrum of stakeholders to expand the knowledge of and advocacy for HVIP programming across the state. In 2021, the CT HVIP Collaborative led the coalition fighting for Medicaid reimbursement for certified violence prevention professionals. HB 5677 is now Public Act 2136. It passed through committee, the House, and the Senate unanimously. This historic piece of legislation makes those who have been in the field longer than 6 months, who have participated in an intensive training by the HAVI, our national certifying body, eligible to receive reimbursement through Medicaid. This is a major step forward in dignifying and professionalizing the
Speaker
work of
time has
violence
elapsed.
prevention
Summarize,
professionals.
please, if you would. Thank you.
Thank you. In conclusion, we at the CT HVIP Collaborative and Hartford Communities Care understand the devastating impact that trauma can have on those vulnerable to gun violence. Programs that engage these vulnerable populations and provide skills, resources, and support are important members of the community violence prevention ecosystem. We believe that the HVIP platform is the right one for supporting evidence-based and community-centered programming, such as the ones recommended in SB 863, and for those reasons, we support this bill. Thank you, and don't hesitate to be in touch with any questions.
Thank you. Anyone? I don't see any. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Have
much.
a great day.
You too.
Next would be Eric Hammerling.
Good afternoon, honorable members of the Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. My name is Eric Hammerling, and I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut Forest and Park Association. I'm also the son of a veteran and grandson of 2 veterans, and I respect the important work you do on this committee. I'm testifying today in opposition to HB 5205, an act exempting veterans from the Passport to the Parks fee, which would result in a direct cut to funding available to operate and maintain Connecticut state parks. Not only are state parks a cornerstone of Connecticut's outdoor recreation economy that generated $3.9 billion in 2021 and supported over 44,000 jobs, but also getting outdoors in state parks offers a wide range of physical health, mental health, and social engagement benefits to veterans and everyone. Every year since the Passport to the Parks began in 2018, more people have been getting to state parks every year, and park attendance in 2021 hit a new high of over 17 million visitors. Because of inflation, rising fuel prices, climate change, and other factors, the cost of operating and maintaining state parks has increased significantly, although the number of park workers has remained flat for the last few years. To cut state park funding now, when operations and maintenance needs are greater than ever, would be devastating. The Passport to the Parks fee of $5 per vehicle per year is reasonable, especially considering that before the passport went into effect, just one weekend visit to a shoreline state park would cost any Connecticut resident $13. When the cost of everything else has risen, this $5 fee has not increased since inception. Before the Passport to the Parks created a reliable level of source of support, state parks and campgrounds were on the brink of collapse. The passport to the parks went into effect in 2018 because in the previous year, 4 campgrounds were closed and both services and operating hours at state parks were curtailed. Backsliding to when state parks and campgrounds were in crisis and threatened with closures would be unacceptable. To be clear, we are not opposed to HB 5205 because it would be an exemption for veterans. The current passport to the parks fee is fair because it applies equally to every vehicle owner. And at the same time, it allows every Connecticut resident the opportunity to visit state parks with no charge at the gate. Exempting veterans or any group from paying the passport fee would open the floodgates for other groups to request an exemption, and the critical revenues generated by the passport would quickly be whittled away. Please oppose HB 5205 and keep the passport to the parks intact to help ensure Connecticut remains a special place for veterans and all people to live, work, and play. Thank you, and I'd be glad to respond to any questions you may have.
Chairman Marks.
Thank you, Chair Nolan. Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Right now, does anybody get an exemption to the passport to the parks?
No, there are no exemptions for all passenger vehicles. And I should add that there is a special benefit that's reserved for veterans under the law at the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. There are 3 facilities that the rest of the public has to pay an entrance fee to get into. This is not a gate fee, but for Fort Trumbull, for Gillette Castle State Park and Dinosaur State Park, there is a visitor center fee that is not paid by disabled veterans. So that is kind of a special benefit that still exists for veterans.
Thank you, sir.
I need to correct myself. Chairwoman Marks.
I'm fine being chairman.
Representative Val.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does your budget directly reflect the exact amount of money that's collected every year in the passport to parks through the Department of Motor Vehicles?
When you say, does your budget, I work for the Connecticut Forest and Park Association, which is a nonprofit organization, but there is essentially $20 million generated by the passport to the parks every year. The estimate in the testimony submitted by DEEP for what the cost would be to the state park system for exempting veterans would be over $1 million a year. But that said, the Department of Motor Vehicles also does not collect that information on whether individual vehicle owners are veterans, as far as I know.
So is it your understanding that the DEEP is going to have $1 million less in their budget per parks, or that we're just going to generate that money elsewhere?
No, that it would be tantamount to a cut of 1.3 million or more. I think that's a conservative estimate to the budget for operating state parks and maintaining them.
So is there a specific fund that goes into, or does it go into the general fund, and then the general fund that's a line item in DEEP's budget for parks?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the nice things about the Passport to the Parks program when it started in 2018 was that these fees that are collected when people register their vehicles go directly into a non-lapsing Passport to the Parks fund that's dedicated to funding operations and maintenance at state parks. So it no longer goes into the general fund. That was the case before the Passport to the Parks Fund was established, along with the fee.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Eric, for your comments. Relative to the Passport to Parks Fund, it is a non-lapsing account that was set up the day that the fee started coming in. It all goes into a fund, you could ask the Office of Fiscal Analysis for the expenditures, a list of the expenditures and revenues that go into that account. It pays for all staff for the parks, to include conservation officers, the part-time staff that work during the summer, the folks that manage the parks, and a number of other staff that oversee the activities that happen in the parks. And before we had this, we had 5 parks that were closed, and now all the parks remain open. And all the parks that were closed were primarily in Eastern Connecticut. On the smaller parks were closed. And so, but you could ask, anybody can ask OFA for the analysis of the Passport to Parks Fund. And that would give everybody the opportunity to see what's in it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I just want to thank Senator Austin for your leadership on these park funding issues, and for being a champion for the passport. And thank you for making it clear how those funds are spent. We really appreciate your support.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Have a nice day, sir.
Thank you.
Francis? Is Francis on? All right, that is our last speaker. Is there? Oh, where? Is Senator Hartley's aide here? Do we have anyone that is present that would like to speak? Please come forward. State your name, please.
Good afternoon. My apologies that we didn't sign up to speak earlier. My name is Tim Stewart. I'm the Vice President of Iwo Jima Historical Foundation, and this is Elaine Schiefer. She is our Secretary and Treasurer. We didn't get our link until late yesterday afternoon, so we were unable to sign up by 3 o'clock, so we showed up here anyways. And several of the
I'm
folks.
sorry, Tim, could you repeat your name?
My name is Tim Stewart. I'm the Vice President of the Iwo Jima Memorial Historical Foundation.
And her name, please?
Elaine Schiefer. I am the Secretary and Treasurer of the Iwo Jima Memorial Historical Foundation. We maintain that a National Iwo Jima Monument in New Britain and Newington, Connecticut.
And Mr. Jeff DeWitt, who was on our board as well, spoke earlier, and I'm not going to rehash all the things that he had said, but the memorial itself was built in 1995 by survivors. It's the only survivor-built Iwo Jima memorial in the country. And as Jeff had said, there was parts of Mount Suribachi there and other things that made it so specific. Dr. George Gentile and Francis was his nephew.
Yes.
Was scheduled to speak. He had to go out. But he founded the foundation back in '96 as a means of maintaining the facility and park to which the monument sits. So over the years, the foundation has raised funds to continue to maintain the park in a very pristine condition. And some of the obstacles that we faced over the years have been the gas bill. The annual gas bill is $6,000. We tried to get that waived and to no avail. There's utilities, another $16,000 or so in utilities. The annual cost of the park are about $28,000 a year to the foundation. And it's been very difficult since COVID to raise funds in order to continue our operation there. So the foundation itself conducts all of the events there. We do events on Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and several other things throughout the course of the year. We host children from various school districts within Newington and New Britain, because the park itself sits on the New Britain and Newington line. So over the years, there's been several attempts to get the state to take over the park, because a lot of times it's either a compilation of Town of Newington, Town of New Britain, plowing, doing things, guys cutting grass, doing things ourselves. And it's gotten to be rather burdensome because of the folks on the committee. Our president, who would love to be here today, but he's in the hospital, just cannot continue to do so. So we would like to continue our focus, which is the events at the park, and have the state take it over. So as I said several times in the past, there was attempts to have the state take it over, and for some unknown reason, the committee itself did not want the state to do it. So some proud folks on that committee many years ago, and it's actually almost on the grounds of CCSU. So it makes a lot of sense. And Dr. Richard Judd, who's the former president of CCSU, is on our foundation board as well, and has been attempting to facilitate some of those things for us. So it's a very
Speaker time has elapsed. Please summarize.
it's a
Thank you.
difficult decision for us to walk away from it. We don't want to walk away from it, but yet we still want to continue doing the things that we do on an annual basis.
Thank you for coming before us.
Would I be able to add something? Because we do work in connection with Central Connecticut State University, doing through their history department and doing programs there. So we do have a good connection with the state university there. And also having President Emeritus of CCSU, Dr. Richard Judd, on our board has been very helpful. They want to continue doing programs, and also we've been in talks with them about they're interested in providing space to open a World War II Iwo Jima museum on the campus. So it would make sense that for the state to take this park over, because they have wanted to in the past, and to help with promoting it as such a amazing national monument too, not only for the state of Connecticut, but it's the only one in the nation that was dedicated to the 6,821 Americans that died in that battle. And it's the only one that has rocks from Mount Suribachi, sands from the beaches, and it's the only one built by survivors of that battle, which have all passed on now.
Thank you very much. Senator Olson?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So we had a bill put into appropriations that talked about the funding for the Iwo Jima Monument, which is in New Britain, right? And we had a debate on whether or not that monument was on state land, town land, or what land? Who owns the land that the monument sits on? Do you know?
Yes, when that was built in 1995, there was the land, I believe, had belonged to the state, and the survivors at the time and the Survivors Association wanted to own the land, and the state deeded it to them. So the land, that piece of property with the monument in the park, is owned by the Iwo Jima Memorial Historical, our foundation. I do have a copy of the deed, but not with me.
Yeah, I don't need to see it. I'm trying to answer the question. So when we're looking at why we should or should not fund it from the appropriation standpoint, and seeing as you're here, I figured I'd take the opportunity to ask a couple questions to find out who it is. Now, does the foundation pay any taxes or anything? to
No,
New
we're a
Britain?
nonprofit organization.
So what you're looking to do here is to return this to the state of Connecticut so that they would accept it back. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. Some clarity questions. So you want the state to take it over, which I never understand that, but they'll always do the best with stuff. Who would take it over within the state?
Well, I think it makes perfect sense that the folks at CCSU maintain the site. It's adjacent to their entry to their maintenance shack, which is right at the entry point of the parking lot to the foundation's asset. So it makes perfect sense. We have private folks cutting the grass and doing snow, and we're out there fixing benches and everything else. I actually got the city last year to come out because I kind of know somebody in New Britain, and we got them to build benches for us so we could have some additional seating out there. So it's partnerships like that we've continued to do over the years. It's just that it's gotten beyond our control, I think, at this point, because there's some additional maintenance issues that are gonna have to be addressed, like curbing that's falling apart from the snow plowing and stuff like that. And there's, at one point, we actually had a museum planned on the site there through some of the original members of the committee. And there was some issues with the state. We never got that done. It's probably about 15, 20 years ago, I think, with Mike Tamura,
Yeah.
some of the folks.
I think one of the problems was that stream that flows through
Yep.
there and there wasn't enough property to maintain a museum there. But CCSU is interested in opening a museum on their campus.
Do they want to have control over this? CCSU?
We've had discussions several times with Sal Centorino, who is the facilities director over there, and there's no, we didn't see any opposition because Dr. Judd actually has been facilitating that discussion for us.
So that $28,000 figure,
Mhm.
would that then, that you're requesting, that would go to CCSU?
That actually probably wouldn't be $28,000 if the state had owned it, because that includes all of our insurance, that includes all the
Well-
costs that we pay.
So whatever that figure would be, that would become a line item then in addition to CCSU? Is that how you
believe so.
envision this?
Yeah.
I think so.
That's not to your organization specifically to take care of it. You're giving up, you're asking to give, okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Making
the
that clear.
insurance That's there is costing us, it cost us $6,000 this past year to maintain the Eternal Flame.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I don't see any more questions. Thank you very much for
Thank
coming before us today.
Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Unless anyone on the committee has anything, that will be. Dallas, anything else? No? Ashley, are you on? No, she is not. So unless there's nothing else, this will be the end of our public hearing. Everyone have a nice afternoon.